All right, traders, good afternoon. This is Christian from Hertz, and it is Tuesday, October 9th, and this is a free, we'll make this making this a public video out to everybody, just a little bit of an example of what we do on a day-to-day basis. But let's start with a couple of the first, what we put out here pre-market to members this morning. These were just names on my watch list. I thought kind of a little bit of mix of names. Walmart, Home Depot, Humana, which we saw some call activity yesterday, Apple, Exxon, JP Morgan, IQ, which we saw calls, and Microsoft, which I thought was a pretty good technical setup, as well as I thought Apple was. And then really three things that, is something that really on a day-to-day basis, it's going to change, but, clearly three things that I thought were of issue and have been kind of paramount, right? Bonds are the big thing. The bond market was closed yesterday, but TLT was open. So let's just cover that really quick, and then I'll go over a little bit about the equities and the option activity for the day, which I think has been pretty aggressive. I would say people are buying the dip. I think today, something that we haven't seen too much, or when we did see it yesterday, it was in smaller pieces. So TLT is up 67 basis points. And this is one of the reasons why I look at the RSI, the relative strength study. This really was flashing for a bounce today. Don't know exactly when those bounces occur, but it had a 23 RSI on it on TLT, which just means to me that the probability is a little bit higher for a bounce in this move, from this move down, and that's basically what we're getting today. And I think that gives a little bit of relief to equities, right? I mean, that's one of the reasons I believe that some areas really why we saw rotation out of growth and into value, and some of the other things that were going on. Same thing with ZB. I very much look at the futures, both the 30-year and the 10-year. This was even worse than TLT yesterday. This was a 21 RSI, right? Remember, anything under a 30 is oversold. Anything over a 70 is overbought. So it doesn't mean that the trend is over or anything like that. It just means things were really hit pretty hard to the downside and really setting up for a bounce. So I didn't necessarily play these for a bounce or anything like that, but obviously there's so many implications with what is happening with equities. I just thought it might give a relief bounce to equity. It might spill over to a relief bounce in equities as well. All right, so that was number one on my list. Number two, and again, these are all things that I sent out pre-market, that world equities are weak. So what did we have today in, if we look to see, it's now past 11:30, so, or 11:45, so Euro stocks are closed. Take a look at the reversal that we saw today. The DAX was getting hit really hard today. It was down about 1% from the lows today, and you see a V recovery for the day for DAX. So again, also providing a little bit of relief, because you woke up this morning and you saw that basically a lot of red that was happening in global equities. So this gives us all things that kind of can lead to a bounce in U.S. equities, right? A little bit of pressure off of global stocks, right? So that was number two on my checklist, and then number three, right? The VIX. So this is something that I watch on a day-to-day basis, especially much more so when there's higher volatility. So look at what we have here, and I'm going to compare this to a couple single name stocks, right? But we've seen for a while, since last Thursday, I like to use the 200 period moving average, and I like to not only use it on the daily chart, which is the 200-day moving average, but also on the 5-minute. So why do I like to do that? Basically, it tells me what the trend is, right? So, and this has happened from time to time when we get these VIX spikes, but look at the decisiveness that we have now. Right, we're breaking the uptrend. Again, this is just a short-term trade. Same thing, the VXN, which is the VIX for the Qs, right? Since Wednesday, Thursday, even maybe a little bit further back, we started to see signs of hints that price was above, going above and getting into a short-term uptrend. Now look at it; it's broken. So It's not to say that this is going to you could go on and party on, but it is showing that volatility is coming in. And then if you take a step back, I mean, this is something that we talked about in yesterday's video. It looked like signs of this, and we also touched upon this in the pre-market session today, that it looked like there were signs that the volatility spikes, right? We don't know if we're in, we never really know, but we look to try to, read the tea leaves a little bit to see if it's just a volatility spike, like we've seen several times before, or it's a greater something greater that's going on. To me, it's had every bit of signs of just a volatility spike. Notice sometimes it goes away in a day or two. Sometimes it takes a week or so for the volatility to come back in. So we're back under, I think we topped out at around almost 18, or we did hit 18, but we're back at 15. Further, if you're looking for further confirmation, maybe a move below the 200-day moving average on the daily chart for the VIX. But again, I think pretty good. And then if you start to look at individual names, and it's basically the same thing but opposite, right? So if you look at Apple, for example, and again, sometimes we want to look at the longer term trend, but if you're looking for the short term for when things are going to change a little bit, if we go ahead and we look at Amazon, and if you watched last night's video, I touched upon this in Amazon specifically. But now looking at Apple, right? This is where Apple went below the 200, and it stayed that way until this morning. We had a false move yesterday, and a move back below. But this is constructive to me. So out of that downtrend, notice the VPOC up here back at the highs. Same thing going on with Amazon this morning. If I could look at this. Same thing going on. Now, we don't have huge momentum. I think we still have to kind of get above here where we were yesterday, but it looks like pretty decent progress. This looks different than all these 50, than all, the several times where we failed. Once here, 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 here. This looks a little bit different. So, it's holding in here where, and again, it's good to recognize where I would be wrong. That would be at 1877, right? Just turning to the overall market, let's look at small caps today. They have to hold in here, right? So that's another thing. So again, it's multiple things that I look at. It's not just one, but this is holding the 200. It's not too much of a bounce, because remember what another possible outcome of today is that we just get a one-day bounce and then we resume a downtrend. So you can't completely rule that out, but I would go back to those, some of the stronger names like Apple and Amazon, and if they start to lose that 200 on the 5 period, then you kind of know that this might just be a one day bounce, and then we're resuming a downtrend. So really watch this level here. So 2 levels, 1877, which is the top of value, and then really, if you want to push it to the downside, 1868. But for now, it's consolidating up here. So I view that as a positive. We're not raging to the upside, but Rome wasn't built in a day. For now, it's good progress so far, middle of day. So again, always remember, look for signals, but look for things where they're going to turn back the other way. So that's what I would be watching there. Just to go over some of today's option activity. Like I said, a little bit of a different pace to today. So there are some dip buyers out there. Sticking with the A symbols. AMD saw some calls today. We're also seeing CarMax, which I actually tweeted this out as an alert. I didn't mean to, but CarMax, a bunch of calls went up here out in November. I think they're up to 9,000. So, you could debate in your mind whether or not you want to be in a auto stock, which I think are really tough right now. But from a technical aspect, I think this may work as a bounce trade, right? You don't have to be in this as as ownership, just as a trade. Maybe a 1 or 2 day bounce, maybe a bounce into the 20-day moving average. Notice you have the support in there, and a lot of institutional buying going up in the November 72.5 calls. All right, so that's one of my favorite trades of the day. I am in that trade. What happened here? I just closed my Excel by accident. There we go. Microsoft. Let me talk about this one. This was a name that I sent out pre-market. The thing that I like about Microsoft is it's been holding up stronger than some of the other ones. Again, still work to do, but you could see right now I would use I would be long against a 111 stop. It's got some, and this is going to be the case for many names. You're going to deal with overhead supply at this point. So you've got the 5 and the 20-day moving averages that have to obtain it. But for now, I'm giving it a shot, and I'm long versus 111. A few other trades that we saw today. Urban calls, some Walmart calls. I want to cover just the Walmart chart. Maybe that's the last chart that I look at. Maybe erring on a little bit more of the defensive side. But hey, this is a great setup. Forget about value and growth for a second. But a name that had great earnings has been basically doing nothing now for the better part of a month, a little more than a month. It had an upgrade today, but it's above this downtrend line. And MACD, possible MACD crossover, not yet. I said I have one more chart, but Burke B. This is a name I got long last week on a technical setup, 52-week high. Pretty bullish looking to me. This was the moving average crunch that helped me get involved into this and the price getting back above. So I'm out of my November calls. I just roll them a little bit into January. I want to stick with a winner, but obviously have taken off my short-term exposure there in November. A couple other trades. Yeah, there was some TLT calls today. VMware, I don't know if this big block is a new trade because it did go up against open interest. IGT and SGMS, they continue to go after calls there. I'm not sure I want to get involved in that one. Those calls have not worked very well. So if calls are not working, maybe they eventually do, but probably not for me. All right, guys. So that's it for the midday session. It's about a 12-minute long video. Thanks for joining me. And these are the types of analysis. Notice the other names that I had on the watch list this morning, most of which are doing pretty good. I do like Exxon as well with nat gas, and I think the technical setup, which I'm not going to go over right this second, but I also like that chart a lot. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.